Have you ever wondered if, like, mushrooms could actually help your immune system?
It's a question more people are asking these days for sure.
Yeah, and today we're really diving into this whole world of fungi and what they can maybe do for us.
It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, we're going deep into the research of Paul Stamets.
No, he's like the mushroom guru.
Right. Specifically, we're going to be talking about his work with agaricon and turkey tail mushrooms.
Yeah, these mushrooms are getting a lot of attention, and for good reason. There's evidence that suggests they could even make vaccines more effective.
Really? That's wild. So to break it all down, we're going to be looking at some excerpts from when Stamets was on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
Right. Stamets has dedicated his life to studying mushrooms, and some of his discoveries, they're pretty mind-blowing.
He's been doing this for decades, and he combines that experience with some really solid scientific studies. It's pretty compelling stuff.
Totally. So let's kick things off with agaricon, which is this super rare mushroom.
Yeah, like really rare.
Yeah, you can only find it in old-growth forests, and it's actually on the red list of threatened species.
Which is why the work Stamets is doing is so important. You know, he's actually cultivating these things and studying them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's crucial to preserve these species, right?
Totally.
So Stamets has this incredible collection of agaricon, over 107 different strains.
It's like the world's largest library of agaricon. It's really amazing.
Wow, that's dedication. But, okay, here's where things get really interesting. So Stamets' research actually caught the attention of the U.S. Defense Department.
After 9/11, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they were worried about, like, biowarfare threats and stuff.
Right, and they were super interested in agaricon's antiviral properties.
Yeah, they were really intrigued by the potential of agaricon and another mushroom, turkey tail, to actually improve the effectiveness of vaccines. They actually conducted a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial to really see how these mushrooms affected how people responded to the Moderna and Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines.
Wow, so they were taking this stuff pretty seriously. So how did the trial work?
Okay, so they took a bunch of people who were about to get vaccinated and put them into two groups. One group got a placebo, made from rice, and the other group got a mixture of agaricon and turkey tail, also grown on rice. Then they kept track of everyone and saw if they had any bad reactions to the vaccines and also checked their antibody levels.
Okay, so what happened? Did the mushrooms actually do anything?
The results were pretty wild, actually. The group that got the agaricon and turkey tail had way fewer side effects, like headaches and feeling tired, compared to the group that just got the placebo.
Wow, it's huge. I mean, everyone was freaking out about the side effects, so if mushrooms can help with that, that's incredible. But wait, there's more, right?
Oh yeah, there's more. So 6 months after everyone got vaccinated, they checked their antibody levels again. And the people who had the mushrooms, their antibody levels were still way higher than the placebo group.
No way. So even after 6 months, their bodies were still better at fighting off the virus.
It seems that way, which suggests that taking these mushrooms, even for a short time, could make the vaccines more effective in the long run.
That is really, really promising. But for people who haven't been vaccinated or couldn't get vaccinated for whatever reason, what does Stamets' research tell us about these mushrooms' ability to just generally support the immune system?
That's a great question. So our innate immune system, that's our first line of defense against anything trying to attack us, not just specific viruses. And Stamets is cautiously optimistic that these mushrooms can actually make that innate immune system stronger, even without vaccines.
So it's like having a super-powered security system that's always on high alert.
Exactly.
Especially with all the crazy new viruses popping up these days.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. And this is where turkey tail comes in.
Okay, I've heard a lot of good things about turkey tail.
It's often called the most studied medicinal mushroom, and for good reason. There's a lot of research on it.
And it's not just good for viruses, right?
Right. There's this study on people with breast cancer, and turkey tail actually seemed to help their bodies fight off the cancer by boosting certain immune cells.
Wow. So we have agaricon, which is like this rare antiviral warrior, and then we have turkey tail, which is like the well-researched champion supporting the whole immune system. That's quite a duo.
They make a great team. And here's something else cool about turkey tail. It's a prebiotic.
Ah, the gut microbiome.
Yes, exactly. It feeds the good bacteria in our gut.
Which is so important for a healthy gut. We've done a few deep dives into that whole world. It's amazing.
It is. And just like a healthy ecosystem needs biodiversity, so does our gut. Stamets talked about this one study where patients were taking amoxicillin.
Oh, the antibiotic.
Yep. And it's really strong. It can kind of wipe out the good bacteria in your gut along with the bad.
Yeah, antibiotics. They're known for that.
Right. But in this study, The people who took turkey tail along with the amoxicillin, their gut flora bounced back way faster.
Interesting. So the turkey tail was like reseeding their gut with good bacteria. That's really cool. So to be clear, we're talking about the mycelium here, right? The root-like structure of the mushroom.
Exactly. That's where the good stuff is.
Mycelium, the unsung hero of the mushroom world. Okay, but here's a question. When we're talking about different species of mushrooms, like Agaricus and turkey tail, do different strains within those species have different levels of potency?
That's a really good question, and it's something that Stamets is really passionate about. It turns out that not all Agaricus is created equal. Remember that Defense Department study? Stamets gave them several strains of Agaricus to test, but only 3 of them actually showed antiviral activity.
Wow, so even within the same species, there's a lot of variation. It's like each one has its own personality.
Kind of.
And this really shows you how important biodiversity is, even on a microscopic level. So what have they found by analyzing the DNA of all of these different strains?
Well, they're finding that within the Agaricus species, there are all these distinct lineages, each with its own unique genetic fingerprint. And some of them are showing a lot more potential for medicinal use than others.
So each one has its own unique set of superpowers just waiting to be unlocked.
Exactly.
That's incredible. And this is just the beginning, right?
Yeah, Stamets believes we've barely scratched the surface of what the fungal kingdom has to offer.
I can only imagine. But unfortunately, unlocking that potential isn't always easy. Stamets has talked about how hard it is to get funding for this kind of research.
Yeah, it's a common problem, especially for independent researchers like him. They often struggle to get the support they need to make real progress.
It's a shame because imagine all the breakthroughs we might be missing out on.
Yeah, and it's not just about the money.
Right. It's also about how we even approach the research itself, right? Especially with something as complex as the human body and the immune system.
Exactly. Stamets talks about this, how we need to move away from reductionist approaches.
Which is basically like trying to understand the whole rainforest by just looking at a single leaf.
Right. Perfect analogy. Because that leaf can tell you something about the tree it came from, sure, but it doesn't tell you anything about the whole ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
All those complex relationships.
Exactly. And it's the same with the immune system.
Totally. It's not just a bunch of individual cells. It's all connected.
So how do we study something as complex as the immune system without, like, oversimplifying it?
Well, Stamets thinks AI could be a game changer here.
Interesting.
Yeah, because with all the data coming out from these observational studies, like the ones he's doing with microdosing, with tiny amounts of psychedelic mushrooms,
Right.
AI could help us see patterns and connections we'd never see on our own.
That makes sense. We've talked before about AI and, like, it could be amazing but also kind of scary.
For sure, it's a powerful tool. But when it comes to something as complex as the immune system, it might be the key, to understanding how everything interacts.
So it's not just about finding that one magic pill.
Not at all. They're way more holistic than that.
And that's what's so cool about these findings with Agaricus and turkey tail. It's like they're working on multiple levels at the same time.
Exactly. They're not just targeting one thing. They're modulating the whole immune response.
Giving our bodies the tools to heal themselves.
That's the idea.
Okay, but we can't talk about Paul Stamets without mentioning some of the, shall we say, less conventional ideas he shared on Rogan?
Yes, the Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Exactly. Who knew that talking about mushrooms would lead us to ancient Egypt? But that's what I love about these deep dives. You never know where you'll end up.
It's true. It can take you to some unexpected places.
So, for those who haven't heard this episode, Stamets actually believes that those hieroglyphs are depicting dot mushrooms.
And not just any mushrooms.
Right. He's specifically talking about Psilocybe cubensis.
The magic mushrooms.
Exactly. So he's suggesting that the ancient Egyptians were using magic mushrooms in their rituals.
It's a trip, right?
Totally. And he even points out specific details in the drawings, like the shape of the caps and this blue color that Psilocybe cubensis gets when you bruise it.
He's making connections that most people wouldn't even think about.
I know. It's fascinating, whether or not you believe it.
Right. But it makes you wonder about the role of mushrooms in ancient cultures in general.
Totally. I mean, Stamets even offered a reward to anyone who can find Psilocybe cubensis DNA in those ruins.
That would be huge.
Right. Talk about rewriting the history books. But even without the DNA evidence, you have to admit the similarities in those drawings are pretty uncanny.
They are pretty striking.
And when you think about it, so many cultures throughout history have used mushrooms not just for medicine, but also for spiritual purposes.
Absolutely. It's a rich history.
It's like mushrooms have been trying to tell us their secrets for thousands of years, and we're just now starting to listen.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And he didn't just stop at Egypt, did he? He also talked about, like, the Druids
Oh, yeah.
and Stonehenge.
Right, like the mushrooms were part of these ancient ceremonies and traditions all over the world.
Exactly, and maybe even psilocybe mushrooms at Stonehenge.
It's a trip, right?
Totally. But it's interesting how he connects all of this, like the ancient world and modern science.
He's got a real respect for traditional wisdom, but he's also a scientist.
Right, which is a cool combination.
Yeah, he's not afraid to look at things from different angles.
And sometimes that's how you make the most interesting discoveries, right? By being open to all the possibilities.
Exactly. And that's what's so fascinating about these mushrooms and the immune system.
It's not just about, like, one chemical doing one thing.
Right, it's way more complex than that.
It's like our bodies are these complex ecosystems, and then you bring in the mushrooms, and they're part of this whole other ecosystem.
And somehow it all works together.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. But, one thing I really like about Stamets is how enthusiastic he is about all this stuff.
He's like a kid in a candy store, right?
Totally. He's just so passionate about mushrooms and what they can do for us.
Yeah, he really believes in their power to heal.
Definitely. And sometimes I think that kind of passion is contagious, Like, it makes you want to learn more, to explore.
Totally. It's inspiring.
So speaking of exploring, remember how we were talking about Agaricus and turkey tail and how they can strengthen our innate immune systems?
Yeah, that first line of defense.
Right. So here's something to think about. Could the same thing apply to our mental and emotional well-being?
That's an interesting question. Like, could these mushrooms, or maybe other kinds, help us deal with stress and anxiety better?
Exactly.
Like, build up resilience so we can bounce back from tough times.
Totally. And it makes sense when you think about it. Our minds and bodies are connected, right?
It's all connected.
So if these mushrooms can have such a profound effect on our physical health, it's not that crazy to think they could also impact our mental and emotional health.
Yeah, and I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of that whole mind-body connection.
For sure. So there you have it, folks. Another deep dive into the fascinating world of fungi.
It's amazing what we're learning about these things.
I know, right? And who knows what other secrets are out there, just waiting to be discovered.
That's the exciting part.
It really is. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep an open mind. Thanks for joining us.